Hi guys, so in this one we'll be looking at biology, that is 2022 paper 2, so for GCE. So let us see how best we can go about this, and we see the choices we can the answers we can put for the different questions. Okay, so now we have, let's look at our first question that we have. So we have our first question there. Figure 1 shows cell division in animals. So that is actually show cell division that is there. We have a zygote here. So we have a zygote. Then the zygote has divided to form A and B. Then A has specialized and given a muscle cell here. Then B has further divided to form these two new cells. And by the way, these are animal cells because, as you can see here, they don't have a cell and their shapes are not regular. So we look at the first question. State the characteristic of living organisms being demonstrated in figure 1. So the characteristic of living organisms that is being demonstrated in figure 1 is called growth. So growth, which is a permanent increase in size of an organism. So growth is the one that is being shown there. Then explain what has happened to cell A. Let us look at cell A. So this is cell A. What has happened to it? So from cell A, it has become a muscle cell. So it has specialized. So it has undergone what we call cell specialization. So we say cell A has become, so cell A has become a specialized cell. So cell A has become a specialized cell. Okay, so that is what has happened to cell A. Right, we proceed. We look at part B. Explain how the zygote in figure 1 can result into the formation of an organism through cell division. Now, the zygote can result in the formation of an organism through cell division. So we're going to look at what cell organization is. So we have this. So I mostly use this memory aid, CTOSO. So now what we are simply saying is that firstly, the cells are going to divide. So we're saying cells divide and become specialized. So cells divide and become specialized. Right, so cells divide and become specialized. Then the specialized cells, they form tissues. So here is for cells, T is for tissues. The specialized cells will form tissues. Then from there, now we are saying the tissues will form organs. So the tissues are going to form organs. Then the organs are going to form what we call systems. So the organs are going to form what we call systems. Alright, so now when you're writing, you should be writing them in full. So you say cells divide and become specialized, then full stop or comma, the specialized cells form tissues, comma, the tissues form organs, comma, the organs form systems which form an organism. So now the systems are the ones which form an organism. Alright. No wonder we define an organism as any living system that responds to stimuli. Alright, we define a system as a group of organs. We define an organ as a group of tissues. We define a tissue as a group of cells, just like that. So that's basically how we can go about this. So these are the stages in cell specialization. From there, we look at another question. Describe two life processes of living organisms and state the role of enzymes in the two processes. Now, the two processes that you should just consider, there is number one is anabolism. Now, what is anabolism? So you should know to say anabolism is a life process where complex molecules, they are made from simple molecules. For instance, photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is an anabolic reaction. The other type of reaction is called catabolism. So catabolism is also another type of life process. Now this is where large complex molecules are broken down to simpler ones. For instance, respiration or digestion. Then you look at the enzymes which are involved in both. Then you are done. So that is basically. So with anabolism, we have smaller molecules that combine to form a more complex molecule here. But catabolism is a situation where we have the complex molecule that breaks down to form the smaller ones. So that is it with those. Okay, then we proceed. We look at question 2. Figure 2 shows the transverse section of a leaf. So this is a transverse section of a leaf. Then we have some questions. Identify tissues X, Y, and Q. Identify tissues X, Y, and Q. So now, what are the tissues X, Y, and Q? So we'll start. So tissue X is called an upper epidermis. So tissue X is called an upper epidermis. So that is the tissue X. It is called an upper epidermis. Then tissue Y, because of these chloroplasts, tissue Y is called a palisade. Now you know the palisade, this is where photosynthesis takes place. That's the site for photosynthesis. Then tissue Q is called the phloem. So tissue Q is called the phloem. So basically those are the functions, those are the labelings of the tissues. Then tissues X and Y were tested for starch. Which of the two tissues would show the presence of a higher concentration of starch? By the way, X is the upper epidermis. We identified X to be the upper epidermis. Okay. Then we identified Y to be the palisade. Now, which one is going to show a high concentration of starch between the palisade and the upper epidermis? So it is indeed the palisade. So you say tissue Y. Give an explanation for your answer given in A1. The reason why the palisade is going to show a high concentration of starch is because, so this is because tissue Y contains chloroplasts while tissue X does not. So it receives light energy to carry out photosynthesis. So that's it basically. Okay, so from there now we proceed. We look at another part. Name the cell labeled R in figure 2. So we go back to the figure so that we can actually look at the cell labeled R. So this one here. So what is the name of this cell there? So the name of this cell is called, now if you can see, it is called the guard cell. So it is called the guard cell. So you go back, so it is called the guard cell. So we go back, so the name, so we've identified to say it is called the guard cell. Then which features does cell R have in common with tissues X and Y that enables it to perform its function? So the feature that they have in common is the vacuole. So the vacuole is one feature that they have in common. So both X, Y, and R, they've got the vacuole, and this is one feature that is enabling it to perform its function. So the vacuole is the one that enables the guard cell to perform its function. So that is the answer for that one. Question 3, figure 3 represents bones of a forelimb of a mammal. So this one is coming from locomotion, the skeleton system. Which letters correspond to the following structures? So in short, we want to give names to these structures that we have. What do you think is the name of this bone? Eye is actually called the humerus. So eye is called the humerus. Then we have H is called the radius. H is called the radius. Then K is called the ulna. So these are the names. So we have the radius, we've got the ulna, and we have the humerus. So this is just a joint. So where there is J here, this is a joint. This is a joint. So now we've identified, so the radius is H, the ulna is K, the humerus is I. Identify the type of joint found at J. So now what type of joint is found at J? So at J we find what we call the hinge joint. We find what we call the hinge joint. Okay, so that's the type of joint that is found there. Then give a reason. Why is it called the hinge joint? This is because it allows movement in one plane. So the movement is done in one plane only. So by one plane, meaning it is 180 degrees forwards and backwards. So movement, no sideways. So movement is done in one plane. Alright, then name two disorders of the joint at J. So two disorders of the joint at J. So disorders of the hinge joint, one of them is called dislocation. So when a joint has moved out of its position, and we have another disorder that we call arthritis. So arthritis is also a common condition that can that is common in joint J. Okay. Explain why a bone is considered to be a living tissue. Why is it that a bone is considered to be a living tissue? So now we are saying we consider a bone to be a living tissue because number one, it is made up of living cells. Number two, it contains and it can produce red blood cells. Number three, it can be infected by bone marrow cancer. no, any disease that a bone can be infected. So now we've said it is made up of living cells, it contains and can produce red blood cells, and it can be infected. So a bone can be infected. So looking at those scenarios, basically, definitely yes, a bone is considered to be a living tissue. Alright, we can proceed. We look at question 4. Figure 4 shows a schematic diagram indicating the movement of water in a plant from the roots to the leaves. So that's the schematic diagram we have. What's the question? Name the part labeled P. Now, this is the part labeled P, and what is the name of this part here? So this part, okay, so now this is a cell, and the name of this cell is called a root hair cell. So it is called a root hair cell. So it is called a root hair cell. Alright. Then identify substance O. So we go where O is. So this is a substance. Now if you're able to notice, this is actually water vapor. Substance O is actually water vapor. Without wasting time, substance O is water vapor. So that is what we have. So substance O is water vapor. Then what name is given to the space through which substance O comes out of the leaf? So the space through which the water vapor comes out of the leaf, that space is actually called the stoma. So it is called the stoma. Okay, now let's look at part B. State the terms used to refer to the processes responsible for the movement of water at points L and M. So now let's go back, we look at point L and M. What terms are responsible for the movement of water at points L and M? Let's look at the points L and M. Points L and M. Right? So this is point. So we have point L here, and we've got M here. Now, at L, the process that is responsible for the movement of water is called osmosis. Then at M, it is going up against gravity. So this one, it is the process is called transpiration pull. So the process is called transpiration pull. So at L it's osmosis, at M it's called transpiration pull. Right. So now those are the ones that you put. Okay. So we've said at L is osmosis. So you just put them here. So we say that L is osmosis. Then at M we've said it's a transpiration pull. Alright. Give 2 reasons why it is beneficial for a plant to lose water at all. So why is it important for a plant to lose water at all? So number 1, it's important for a plant to lose water for photosynthesis. Water is actually needed for photosynthesis. Secondly, for cooling. So actually plants are unable to move like human beings move. So the same water, it has a cooling effect on plants. So it's also beneficial. It has a cooling effect on plants. Alright, part D. Apart from the xylem vessel, name another vessel found in the stem used for transport. Now, apart from the xylem vessel, another vessel that is used for transport is called the phloem. Actually, the phloem is the one that is responsible to transport food particles, then water and minerals. The xylem is the one that is responsible. Right. We proceed. Look at another question. Question 5. Define each of the following terms. A1, a gene. How can we define a gene? A gene is defined as a basic unit of inheritance. So a gene is defined as a basic unit of inheritance. As simple as that. What of genotype? Genotype is defined as the genetic makeup of an organism. So the genetic makeup of an organism, that is genotype. Okay, in a family of rats, the recessive allele D causes stunted growth. If it occurs in a homozygous animal, use a genetic diagram to predict the offspring produced if two heterozygous rats were mated. So now, this is a question on genetics. How do we go about that? So, how do you draw cross diagrams, genetic diagrams? So the first thing that you're supposed to do is you're supposed to find what we call the parental phenotype. Now, the parental phenotype is that we have a normal parent who is, so we can say we have a normal male mating with a normal female. So we have a normal male mating with a normal female. All right. So now, then, what of now? This is parental phenotype. We now look at what we call parental genotype. So the parental genotype is, so I'm going to use the letters D. So I'm going to use, because using the recessive allele D, so I'm going to use, so I'll say, so these were heterozygous. So heterozygous, so meaning they'll be like that. So heterozygous D and that. Okay, so this is these are the parental genotypes. Then I now put gametes. I now put gametes here. So gametes, so we have D there, D there, D there, D there. Then from there now, what do we have? Now we can now have our F1 offspring. So our F1 offspring we have, so let's say, so we have this is going to cross with that one, then this is going to cross with that one, like that. Then again we say this is going to cross with that one. All right, then we come to this one, this is going to cross with that one. So meaning here the D, we have DD, then here we have DD like that, then here we have that starting with the capital, then here we have like that. So these are the offsprings. So these are the offspring. So these are the genotypes of the offsprings. So the offsprings are genotypes. All right. Now, what of the phenotype of the offspring? So the first generation offspring phenotype. So we have a normal. So we have normal, again normal. We have normal, Then the last one is stunted. So the last one is stunted. So out of 4, 3 will be normal, then 1 will be stunted. So that is what we have in here. So that's basically how you can draw this genetic diagram. Alright, we proceed. We look at part C. Explain one named cause of genetic variation. So what causes genetic variation? So one of the causes of genetic variation is genetic factors such as mutation. So actually mutation, we can look at that is where maybe when the number of chromosomes or structure of a gene suddenly change. So for instance, we know the normal number of chromosomes in a normal human being, they are supposed to be 46. So now for a person who is Down syndrome, they will have 47 chromosomes. So that one is a mutation, where there is a change, a sudden change in the number of chromosomes. So now that is what we have. So one cause of genetic variation is mutations. Then you just explain. So mutation is one cause of that. So genetic factors such as mutations. Then you explain that one. Alright, so once you are done there, we have section B, which are essay questions. So what I'll do is I'll just give a guide, then you'll be able to answer. You'll be able to write the solutions on your own, but I'll be able to just give a guide, then maybe I would write where it would be necessary. So we have question 6A. What is meant by good health? 4 marks. So what is meant by good health? 4 marks. So you start. That's an essay. You'd say good health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being accompanied by freedom from illness or pain. Full stop. It is dependent on receiving a balanced diet and appropriate physical and mental activities. As simple as that. That is how you can define good health. Second one, with named examples, explain the following types of diseases: genetic and social. So start with the first one. Now, genetic diseases, these are diseases which are inherited from parents to offsprings. So for instance, we have Down syndrome and we have albinism and a disease like sickle cell. So all those are genetic diseases. Then social diseases, these are diseases that are self-inflicted. For instance, HIV and AIDS, drug addiction. So those are social types of diseases. Then describe the cause, signs, and symptoms of bilharzia. Then there we are saying bilharzia is caused by scytosoma. The signs and symptoms include blood in urine, blood in feces, anemia, and tiredness. So that is what you can say about bilharzia. Section 7. Outline the functions of the different parts of the flower. So this is 8 marks. So basically you're supposed to identify at least 8 different parts of the flower. Then you state their functions. For instance, you can say the flower consists of the following parts: the flower stalk. The flower stalk links the flower to the stem. Then receptacle. The receptacle is a part where flowers are attached. You can look at sepals. Sepals protect the flower in the bud stage from drying up. You can look at parts like petals. The petals are brightly colored and are scented to attract insects for pollination. You can look at filaments. They hold the anthers. You can look at the anthers. The anthers produce and store pollen grains. You can look at stigma. the stigma receives pollen grains. You can look at the style. The style holds the stigma. You look at the ovary. The ovary produces and contains ovules. You look at the ovules. The ovules, that's the place of fertilization. So you mention at least 8 parts and you state their function. Then you'll be able to get all the 8 marks. Part B. Describe the characteristics of wind dispersed seeds or fruits. Now, the characteristics of wind dispersed seeds or fruit is that they are supposed to be small, they should be light, they should have wing-like structures. Now, those will help them now to float such that landing will be delayed. So an example of a seed that is wind dispersed is a sycamore seed. That is an example of a seed that is wind dispersed. Alright, question 8. Explain the meaning of the term sexual harassment. So what is the meaning of the term sexual harassment? So sexual harassment is an effort to achieve sexual satisfaction by taking advantage sexually someone of the opposite sex. That is sexual harassment. Part B, describe ways of resisting sexual harassment. So here we can say sexual harassment can be resisted by being firm, being consistent in verbal and non-verbal resistance. It can also be resisted by avoiding explicit dressing. Then we are done. Part C, explain appropriate sources of help on sexual harassment matters. So the appropriate sources of help include: you can report to parents, you can report to responsible adults in society, you can share it with your peers, religious institutions, school guidance, the media, NGOs, the police, or the victim support unit. All those are appropriate sources of help on sexual harassment matters. Alright, then we have question 9, part A. What is meant by the term hormone? What is a hormone? In simplicity, a hormone is a chemical that is secreted by ductless glands. It is transported by blood and has effects on one or more target organs. So that is a hormone. Part B. Describe the effects of underproduction of the following hormones in humans. We have insulin and thyroxine. So before you can look at the effects, you need to know what those hormones do. For instance, insulin. When there are high levels of glucose in the body, insulin will convert that glucose to glycogen. So now, what do you think would happen if insulin is produced in low amounts? So now we are saying underproduction of insulin leads to the disease called diabetes mellitus. Now, the signs and symptoms of diabetes mellitus are: number 1, abnormal high levels of glucose; number 2, the loss of weight; number 3, loss of sensation in some body parts. So basically, low levels of insulin leads to diabetes mellitus. Then the second part, thyroxine. Underproduction of thyroxine causes crantism. Now, what is crantism? Crantism is a condition where the physical, the mental, and sexual developments of a child are retarded. It also causes the formation of a goiter due to swelling of the thyroid gland. Then, the same underproduction of thyroid, it can lead to underdevelopment of the basal metabolic rate, the BMR, the basal metabolic rate. So those are the effects of underproduction of thyroxine. Go to question 10. Part A, define the term biodiversity. How can we define the term biodiversity? Now, biodiversity can be defined as the variety of living organisms in an ecosystem. The variety of living organisms in an ecosystem, that is biodiversity. Part B, explain 4 ways of maintaining biodiversity. So, some ways in which biodiversity can be maintained. So, number 1, by avoiding deforestation. Number 2, by avoiding overfishing. Number 3, by avoiding overhunting. Now, it is also important for you to note that biodiversity also can be maintained by encouraging gamekeeping and applying what we call the 3 areas of conservation. Now, what are the 3 areas of conservation? The 3 areas of conservation, we have reduce, reuse, and recycle for sustainable use of resources. So that is how you can maintain biodiversity. Then the last part is identify the importance of conserving plant and animal species. What is the importance of conserving plant and animal species? So conservation of plant and animal species is important because number 1, it adds value and creates tourism. Number 2, for medicinal benefits from plants and animals. So now we know plants and animals also can be used for food. They can also help us for educational purposes and research, and also for preservation, that is for future generations. So that one is also going to help us. So that's basically how you can go about that. So you can try to answer these questions and be able to show me how best you can write the essays. And you write them in essay form. You don't use bullets. You write in essay form. You explain the answers in essay form.